What's up, YouTube? Today we're gonna work on my 535i 2011 F10. We're gonna change out the starter because it has failed, and we're gonna do some brake work as well. Here's the car. So these are the parts we're going to swap out today. I ordered these parts off of FCP Euro. I don't have any affiliation with them, but ordered from them successfully in the past. So the main unit is the starter. Then we have starter bolts. This all came as a kit. These are the intake gaskets. Then I also will be doing brake replacement, brake pads and calipers. Sorry, brake pads and rotors, and this is the front brake pad sensor. This is the rear brake pad sensor. These are the rear pads, front pads, and two rear rotors that need to be replaced. So let's get started. Alright, so first thing we did is we went over into the back trunk of the car and go under here, disconnect the negative battery terminal of the battery, and then you need to make sure that you don't accidentally close the trunk of the car. So I just knotted up this towel here. If you close the trunk with your battery disconnected, you're not going to get it open unless you go through the rear seats. So do not make that mistake. Then come up front. So the starter is all the way back here. Can't even really see it. It mounts on, I think, the transmission bell house. So we have to actually take all of this off. So right now I'm just going to start pulling all the intake components off. These are going to come off, and I'll show you kind of flash through each of those coming off. Alright. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys really quickly this cover just essentially pops off. It's got grommets in the front that connect here and here, and then these clips in the back that you have to pull forward on. Okay, so they connect here, here, and down there. You essentially pull up in the front and then pull away. You don't have to pull up in the back because you'll snap these little clips. Alright, next thing you do is you remove this brace from the front here. This bolt, I just screwed it back in place. This bolt over here. So that comes off. And then you have to take off the intake duct. So the front is pretty simple. You just press in and pull it out. Then on the other side, you have to come down into this little cutout, and it's hard to catch on the camera, but down in here you have to use a long screwdriver. You have to push in on a clip down there and release it, so that then you can pull out this duct, which I'll do right now. Alright, now we're going to take these three harnesses off the intake silencer. It's one, you just pull them up, pull the back one off, and the middle one off. That to free up the silencer housing. Alright, next thing you need to do is take off the silencer itself. I've already loosened it. Basically, you loosen this clamp up here, hose clamp, then you just have to pull them up off of the rubber grommet mounts. So you just pull up and pull it out, and there you go, it's out. Alright, so next we're going to have to disconnect all the harnesses that are down here on the engine control unit. Now, I've already heard that this is a big pain in the butt. Apparently each of the connections are different, and in typical BMW fashion it's not easy to take them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out and then show you what the connector type is afterwards. That'll probably be the easiest way to describe it. Alright, so basically the way you get these off is there's a tab here that you have to press in, and then it allows this bracket to slide off. As you slide it off, the plug comes out and you have to just pull it out. Easier said than done, right? There we go. Move it to the side. So it's really dark in here, but you can see this tab right here you have to press on. Alright, so then on this last one here, it's kind of tricky. You've got to slide down this tab, slide this down like that, and then this harness will come out. Then there are only two left. Alright, for these last two harnesses, here's one of them. You just need to press down on both sides and pull it out. So there's a lot of harnesses in the way at this point, but it's hard to see. They come out of these two right here, just two positions. Press in on both sides and pull it out. Alright, so now you come up to the front near your alternator, and you need to release this harness from the little clip here. It's pretty easy. Alright, now you have to remove the plug from your vent valve. Just press in here and pull it out. Alright, so next we're going to remove this vacuum line. So from here, unclip it from here, and disconnect it from here to get it out of the way. To unclip these, you essentially press on two sides and pull up, which is kind of a pain to do with one hand. Alright, next we're going to remove this vacuum line right here. Let's see. By removing that Torx head, and then it's going to unclip. It runs up through here. It's going to unclip right here. So you unscrew and pull up down there, and then here you pinch and pull up. Okay, next you got to remove this plug connection. It's hard to see. Let me see if I get a good flashlight on there. Plug connection from there. I think it's called the throttle valve drive, which is probably that little module right there. But you have to remove this clip from it. Pretty standard clip. Push in at this little tab right here and pull out gently. You never want to pull these hard because you might break them. Alright, this next step I don't think is mandatory, but I did it because I was having trouble getting to access, good access to that screw down there. Maybe it's because I just have fat hands, but basically, again, it's a vacuum connection. So you press in, it was connected here, on this rubber mount was on here. So as you press in with one hand, you just slide it out. That's giving me better access to that screw for the vent line that I've been trying to take off. Okay, next you're going to remove this vacuum line down here, and which also connects up here, just to get it out of the way. Okay, so this is the vacuum line I was trying to take out. Again, I unclipped it here. I had to use a flathead screwdriver just to pry up against this tight space here. Pull up. You need 2 hands to do it. Again, down here, this part of the line unscrewed and just pulled straight up, and you just pull it through. Sorry, pull it through the intake. Put it down. Alright, the next thing we're going to do here is clear up some of the space over the intake. So I'm going to remove this cover here and this harness assembly. I'll show you after I've done it, but basically I'm going to unscrew this clamp here, and I'm also on the side going to unscrew these Torx screws or star screws, and pull. There's some screws on the other side, and I'm going to pull this all out of the way to free up space to get to some of the intake bolts that are in the back here. So on this side, remove this harness. You push in on this clip and pull it out. Unscrew this clamp here. You should be able to pull this out. I need 2 hands. 1 second. Alright, to give you all a little update, I was able to pull off this duct here. Again, as I said, I just unscrewed this, but I needed 2 hands to pull it off. Then there are 3 Torx screws down in here that I had to unscrew to loosen up this harness bracket. And right now I'm working on getting all the last connections off so I can pull this whole harness system out of the way, or harness, assembly out of the way. So I unplugged this as well, pull up on this clip and pull out gently, and then right now underneath I'm going to unplug that harness in the back, and then I'm gonna search around for whatever else might still be hooked up. I should be able to pull this away pretty soon. I see that down here I'm gonna have to disconnect a plug down on the bottom, which when I get to it I'll show you. And the idea is that I want to pull all this harness out of the way so I can get clear access to the intake. Alright, so this is where I am now. I want to show you, I disconnected a plug that's all the way back. It's in the back of this fuel rail, and it's really hard to see, but to get it off you have to push down here and pull out. It's just in a really difficult to see place, so that was a bit of a pain. Now this whole harness is loose. The only thing is I can't quite see, there's one more plug somewhere deep in under the intake that's plugged in, and I don't exactly see where. So I might have to leave it where it is right now, but at least if you could see, I have access to all of the intake bolts now, which I have to get out of the way to get to the starter. Next I'm going to remove this pipe. I've got to pull this back and unscrew this and unplug this harness here, and then I should be able to pull this duct out. It's connected on a grommet here, or mounted on a grommet right there as well. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Alright, so I got the charge pipe out as I described. Now all I've got to do is, well, not all I've got to do, but the next step is to start to remove the manifold. Now I'm pretty sure underneath the manifold there are harnesses that are still connected, but I don't really know where they are. I don't can't see them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly start to pull back the intake plenum And I will, as I pull it off gently, I'll check to see where the harnesses are and pull them out as needed. Alright everybody, here's another update. So, let me see, last time I was telling you that I took the charge pipe off, and I was going to remove the intake manifold. So, I've removed the bolts and nuts. There's only one bolt on this first position, and then the rest are nuts. I started with the harder one all the way in the back. Thankfully I was able to get clear access because I had done all that work with the harnesses. And I was very careful when removing them, because the last thing you want to happen, or I want to happen, is to go through all this work and then have one of those little nuts fall down. So I'd say, like with this type of thing, just take your time, get it loose until you can unscrew it by hand, and then put your fingers on it and carefully unscrew them. Don't do it in a rush. Something I might have not mentioned is that I did plug up all of the open ducts to make sure we don't get any debris, or I don't get any debris in them. There was also a lot of sound deadening material. This is an older car. There's a lot of debris on the top of the engine from sound deadening material that had kind of just eroded or degraded away. I just wanted to say that I'd recommend blowing this off with compressed air before you start pulling off the intake plenum. I just did that. It's not perfectly clean, but there's a lot less debris here. There was a lot of sound deadening material from the plastic cover that had fallen down here. So that's just a note to try to avoid having debris fall into the intakes. Another thing to note is that a lot of these harnesses are embrittled over time, so I'd be very patient with them, pull them off by the plastic mount, not the wires themselves. It seems obvious, but it's very tempting to just yank them off. Don't do that. So, always be patient. I don't have a pick tool. I might pick one up later today. I think I used to have one and I can't find it, but a pick tool would be very useful when pulling off these electrical harnesses, just because they're very finicky. So now I'm going to pull off this intake plenum, and like I said before, there might be, or I'm sure there are some harnesses that are connected underneath that I'm going to have to disconnect. I'll show you those as I get to them. Alright, something to note really quick: as I was pulling the intake off, this harness was in the way. It seems like I could probably clear it, just barely, but to avoid the risk of damaging the wires, I'm just pulling this off. Okay, so as I expected, as I was pulling off the intake, there is a plug down on the bottom that's left that needs to be removed down here. So I'm just gonna standard plug, just gonna use a pick tool to loosen it and pull it off, and then it looks like that's all of the connections freed up. Alright, so here we are. We were able to get the intake off, and we now have kind of visual access to both the starter, which is what we're trying to replace today, but also your valve intakes, which I'm going to try to show the condition of these, because with direct injection engines, this often gets discussed. You end up getting more buildup on your intake runners than you would on a non-direct injection engine. So if you were a better planner, than I am, you would ideally clean these while you have access to them, but I don't have the tools to do that now, so I'm going to have to cover these up and address that later. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tape up the intake ports so that no debris falls into them. Really, you want to do this as soon as possible. Again, it's a shame that I don't have a walnut blaster, and I didn't really know that this starter was going to fail on me. It failed on us basically 2 days ago, and I just got a rush order for the starter, and I've got to get it in and out, or get this one out and get a new one in today, get this car back on the road. So I'm going to tape up the ports, and then this is the starter back here. Next things that need to be done is to disconnect all of the electrical harnesses. Then there are 2 bolts that hold it on. There's one there, and then the other one threads in from the firewall. You can see the end of the stud here, the end of the bolt here, but it actually threads in from the other side. So that's going to be fun to take out. And then, another thing I was thinking of doing, which I'm not sure if I'm going to do today, I might, but I like, as a standard practice, to use some red tape or orange tape, some kind of bright colored tape, and tape all of the electrical harnesses that I removed. The reason being is that, if you look here, this is just a whole mess of harnesses. I mean, and they're all camouflaged in with everything else. It's a little bit hard sometimes to see all of them, right? There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's like 6 or 8 of them here, there's one way back here. So there's a danger of reassembling everything and forgetting one of them. So I would say I might not get to it today, but I'll try to, and I'll go ahead and I'll actually use tape to connect. Use tape on all of these to remind myself that they need to go back. If this was a more complex job, I might tape these and number them, and then on the opposite connection, on the female end, I would tape that with the same number to make sure that I insert the plug to the same position. But in this case, I've seen that these plugs, I'm not going to say for sure they're all unique, but they definitely seem like it's hard to mix them up between each other, and that's by design. I know this is a pain in the neck to work with all this electrical wiring, but the fact that these have unique connections is a good thing. You don't have as much of a risk of miswiring something. So anyhow, I'm going to get back to it. I'm going to start removing the connections off the starter, and I'll show you that once I've done. I'm also going to tape up the intake ports. So this is the intake once it's off the engine. This, I believe, is called the DME. Oh yeah, there it is right there, DME. As I mentioned, there was an electrical wire here that was hidden, but as I pulled it off, I could remove it. I'm going to replace, and you should also replace, all the intake gaskets, which are in this groove here, which I'll pick out and replace them. And that's pretty much it. I'll probably blow it off because the other side has some dust on it. Blow it off before installing it back on, and make sure not to forget that this vacuum line is here. You could probably remove this, but I'm leaving it there in case, just to lower the risk of forgetting. And then I'm also going to take a clean rag and gently put it up into this hole so nothing funny crawls in there like a lizard. Alright, so I just wanted to point out something here. First of all, I just remove this harness. You just push in on the clip and pull out. I started to unscrew this nut, which is a 13mm nut. And I just want to point out that I think it's important to install this the same way that it's come out. So it's got a washer, then a spacer, then your electrical, cable or connection. This is coming from your battery, and then this nut. And I think that is important to note and replicate that when you put it back on. Alright guys, we're a step further. Now this is something that if you look at a lot of videos and DIYs for this project, you'll see that a lot of them are for 3 series starter replacements. And something that they talk about is the inaccessibility, or not being able to access one of the 2 bolts that holds the starter on. So the starter's got 2 mounting bolts. So it's got the one down in the bottom right over here, and then it's got another one that's over here. Now it threads in from the firewall towards the front of the car, so it's kind of opposite to your frame of reference, or from the direction you're looking, it's opposite. So first of all, on the 5 series, this is an F10 535i. The engine bay is larger than the 3 series, so I am able to get this spanner with a 10mm 12-point or Torx bit on the end, and I'm able to get to that nut and I can wrench on it. Now I need 2 hands because I've seen a lot of people online, they spin the nut, the head of the bolt I mean, and I think the reason why is because it's a little bit awkward, and people will attack the bolt not at a perpendicular angle. They'll be off angle when they should be straight perpendicular when they're trying to loosen the bolt. So I need 2 hands to do this. One's going to be to make sure that it's perpendicular, and then the other one's going to be trying to apply load. And then the other thing to note is that because the bolt is facing opposite to you, you're used to seeing the head of the bolt, but now you're seeing the end of the bolt. You need to, it's still, counterclockwise to loosen, but now counterclockwise is opposite to you. So you need to loosen it, you have to go in this direction. So instead of, if you're looking at the bolt from up top, like this bolt over here, I'm gonna loosen it like this. Well, if it flips over, you loosen it like this, right? And you'd be surprised how many people don't notice that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and remove these now. All right, so this is the starter off the car. Pulled off. This is a look down into the transmission, the flywheel. It's right there. It's good to check it, make sure there's no chips or strange kind of abnormal damage to the flywheel. But now I've got my other starter on hand. I'm going to go ahead and install it. Installation is going to be reverse of disassembly, so at this point it should be pretty self-explanatory. I'll make note of any issues that we run into though as we install this. Thank you. Alright guys, So, finished with the replacement of the starter motor. Everything's back together. We're going to go ahead and hit the start button here in a second. So, a couple things to note really quickly. Unfortunately, yes, I did lose some fasteners. So, I tried my best not to, but down back here where these harness tray is fastened, that little torque screw, there's supposed to be 3 of them near there. One of them dropped down into the bay. That sucked. And then at the same time, I guess I was already getting pretty tired. On the other side, the same, you can't see it from here because it's underneath here, the same screw that holds the tray in place, the harness tray, same thing happened. So it's down there. Its new home is down at the bottom of the engine somewhere. So just connected the battery. Let's see if it starts up. I sincerely hope it does. You'll notice a brake change warning when this comes on. That's because I have to change the brakes, and I plan on changing the brakes. So I've got the brakes, as I showed at the beginning of this video, in my garage, and I'll probably do that tomorrow because today I'm exhausted. So let's see what happens here. Yes! Woohoo! Didn't have my brake pedal pushed down all the way on that first click, so it should have come on the first time, but I guess I didn't have my brake pedal pushed down all the way. And here's that message. So we got this last week, replaced brake pads. That's the when the brake pad sensor is worn in, you get this message on the screen. So as I noted, I've got the parts and I'm probably going to change those tomorrow, and I'll share a video on that as well. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to let the engine run a little bit. I think our battery might be a little bit low because when we first had this issue, you know, we attempted to start the car a couple times. Some other people came while I wasn't with the car, and they tried to start the car. So probably best to let it run a little bit after a couple days of being off like this. No warning lights. The only warning light I have is the brakes. So let's go in here, see vehicle status. Okay, so door open, trunk open, brake system warning. So brakes we talked about. Obviously my driver door is open, the trunk is open because I just connected the battery, and I need to set the time and date because the battery was disconnected for a couple days. So we're all set. This is awesome. She's stuck through it the whole time. Oops. Forgot to remove this little safety here. Very important, whenever you disconnect the battery, you need to put tie a knot here with a rag so that nobody can come by and close this battery, because then you'll have to go through the back seats to get in. So let's see. Maybe I have to manually close it the first time. There we go. Alright, sweet. there she is. Thanks everybody for joining. I'll have another video about the brake installation out probably in a day or two. So everybody, first drive after replacing the starter motor, just kind of started it up, letting it run a little bit after being off for like 3 days. And you know, we had tried to start the motor a couple times, so I'm trying to just give the battery an opportunity to charge back up, make sure everything's running well. Got no codes related to, you know, engine operation right now. It's running great. I just want to talk really quickly about this car. So I'm going to do a separate kind of let's call it long-term review of this car. It's a 2011 535i. So the chassis series with BMW is an F10 chassis series. It's a car that we've owned for it's about 2 years now. Bought it used, obviously. It's currently 2019. This is a 2011 model, so it's a little bit older, going on, you know, 8 years. When we bought the car, it had, I want to say, just around 86,000 miles on it. And I mean, I just wanted to say that I think these cars are a steal, a total steal. If you are okay with, like, you know, wrenching on a car yourself, doing some preventative maintenance yourself, you know, when things like, you know, this job, a starter motor happens, and you're okay with spending some time fixing it. You know, today, honestly, I live in Florida. We're starting with the summer season, and kind of the rainy season has started here. And today I started early, but had to stop because of torrential downpour of rain, probably 4 or 5 times throughout the day. So I think it started at 8, and right now, shoot, I don't even know what time it is. It's probably 5 or 4. And yeah, unfortunately I had to stop so many times. I think if I would have done this job straight through without stopping, I want to say, because I'm not so familiar with this engine, as you guys noticed, and a lot of it was kind of some real-time learning, I think I could get this job done normally without rain in 3.5 to 4 hours, just because I go a little bit slower. I know people can probably do this in 2.5 hours. Even, you know, non-mechanics. I wouldn't be surprised if a mechanic could do this in 2 hours. Which is crazy, because I got a quote to do this job for almost $1,000, and that wasn't even the dealership. The dealership didn't want to quote me until I brought the car in, which is typical. I went online. The starter motor was $139 with a lifetime warranty from FCP Euro. That was, I think that might have been the kit cost. If not, then maybe the kit was, you know, $10 or $20 more. And the kit included the 2 bolts for mounting, as well as the 6 inlet plenum gaskets, the rubber O-ring style. They're not O-rings, but they're rubber gaskets that go on the inlet plenum. So I'll do, as I said, a full review of this, but I think these cars are a steal. We've driven just over like 30,000 miles in the last 2 years on this car, and I have had almost no issues with the car.
I think the car's really in great exterior and interior condition. You know, there's no cracks in the leather. It drives really quietly and smooth. It drives, you know, we obviously change out the tires and do alignments, and when you take care of it, I've got no suspension issues, but this thing will cruise at like 100, 110 on the highway. If you were ever to find a highway that, you know, where that's legal, but you could do it, is all I'm saying. And I think that, you know, it's quick, it's peppy, and we got it for $14,000. So you could even get them probably cheaper now. Obviously, it's 2 years ago. You can get them cheaper, and I would absolutely buy this car again. We've really liked it a lot. The more my wife drives other cars after, you know, driving this car, the more she likes this car, to the point where we recently sold our Buick Enclave, which was our family car, and replaced it, or I gave this car, the F10 535, to my wife, and I am buying a new car for myself, and I'm still sticking with an F10 5 Series chassis. You guys will find out really soon what the new car is, because I'm going to be kind of blogging about it, but let's just say I'm really excited about it. So anyways, again, I'm going to do a review of this car, but I just wanted to you know, chat with you a little bit as I drive around and let this engine run a little bit before I shut it off. So thanks for watching, and I hope this video was helpful to you. I'm going to again post another video on the brakes, because I'll be changing the front brake pads. The rotors are fine, and then I'm going to be changing the rear brake pads and the rear rotors. All right, thanks, bye.